Hi, this is Russ with Health Forward Online, and I have the pleasure of sitting with Lisa Montgomery. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
And she is the author of this book, Raw Inspiration. We're going to talk to her a little bit. First off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what brought you to the healthy lifestyle that you're living today.
Well, my name is Lisa Montgomery, and I'm from Royersford, Pennsylvania, northwest suburb of Philadelphia. And how I got into this lifestyle is 15 years ago. I changed my diet because I had food allergies and candida. So I cleaned out my cupboard the first time, and then I went microbiotic, vegetarian, raw. Now, my first degree is in business, and I'm actually a packaging sales rep by day, but the healthier I got, the more passionate I got, so that on the side in my vacation time and weekends, I got certified as a listed healthcare practitioner, and I also got certified as associate raw chef instructor at Your Living Light Institute of Raw Foods right up in Fort Bragg, California.
Yeah.
And I just got more and more passionate about it, and I saw the transformational effects it had on me, where, once you heal your body physically, you can then work on the emotional and spiritual. And then I also started raw potlucks about 4 years ago in my home, and I've been blessed to have world-renowned speakers such as Victoria Skavinskas, Brian Clement, Dr. Doug Graham, and you name it, I've had it. But probably the most significant or most world-renowned is Carol Alt. You see, when I started the monthly raw potlucks, I started a monthly raw potluck newsletter. And being a networker by profession and by nature, I put Carol Alt, since she is a raw foodist, on the newsletter list. And about 3 months into the potlucks, I got contacted by her co-author, David Roth, and he said, gee, we'd like to use one of the recipes of your potlucker in Carol's new book, The Raw 50, which was 2 Julys ago. That would be July 2007.
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, well, if you like that recipe, I'd like to connect you not only with that potlucker, but several of my other potluckers. So long story short, several of my potluckers, as well as one of my potluckers, are in her book, The Raw 50. And I said, I'd really love to have Carol come and speak at one of my events. And they said, well, Lisa, for all the work you've done, you and your potluckers have done more for this book than anybody else. We're going to make it happen. So it actually did. I had the Raw 50 Health Expo at the park at the end of my street.
Wow.
And we had health and nutrition vendors. We had a whole program, musicians, the local congressman, state representative, mayor, were all there. And why bring them in? Because they gain, it added credibility to the event. And each one of those gentlemen, their platform do have a health and wellness as part of their platform, because what we do individually does affect the greater good, and it actually affects our tax dollars.
Yeah.
So anyway, Carol Alt did come and speak, and we had over 300 people, and the local media was there, and it brought attention to healthy living and healthy lifestyle. And probably about the last 4 books, last 4 years, I've had people say, you ought to write a book, And I'm like, well, who wants to hear what I have to say? I'm not a writer.
Yeah.
Never as a child, like, I'm going to be an author someday.
Right.
Never crossed my mind. But when you have countless people saying, you ought to write a book, and they give you the exact same format, it was like, okay, Lord, I get it. I'm writing the book. So I wrote a book, and here it is. Plus, last year, I also submitted a TV pilot to the Food Network. They said it was the best pilot they'd ever received, but that there was no market for healthy eating or healthy living, which, of course, I tend to disagree with.
Right.
So in God's perfect timing, the right venue will bring itself, and because, again, I know how much it's transformed my life. Some people will say about this book, it's a raw cookbook. For me, I say it's more a motivational, inspirational book, because you will feel better, and then you get so much better that you can go after your life passion for whatever that may be. A lot of people are just living their life, barely making it through the day. They come home from work, take a shower, pack their lunch for the next day, and then repeat the same thing over and over again, that they're not really living. Whereas once you heal your body physically, you really do begin to live. Maybe that's why they call it living food.
Yeah. So when you switched to living food, raw foods, obviously your health
Yes.
changed dramatically.
Yes.
And what are some of the biggest improvements that you've seen?
Well, I always had a lot of energy, but I had more energy, and I would say instead of being a hyper energy, it's a peaceful energy. I'm also 52, and look at my skin. No one ever guesses my age. And I think there's more like a vitality and vibrance that comes from within, and it just comes out, or at least that's what they tell me. But you're also clear-headed, and one of the things I did have, as I mentioned, is I had candida, which is an overgrowth of yeast.
Yeah.
And I had 26 out of the 40 symptoms. A lot of people think some of the symptoms they have are, oh, I'm just getting older, or it's a predisposition because it's genetics. Baloney. It had everything to do with what I was eating. It had nothing to do with me getting older.
Huh. I wrote down some questions here. I want to focus on some of the negatives of what we call the SAD diet, the standard American diet. What are some of the biggest negatives with the way most Americans eat?
They probably eat too much.
Yeah.
You can tell by the size. Let's say you don't want to go raw, but if you want to improve your standard American diet, take out the white flour, take out the sugar, take out the dairy, all those take away from and not add to, and take out the packaged food. So that this isn't like I'm a brain, surgeon here, and you can figure this one out on your own. Eat healthy food, non-packaged food. Even if you are going to cook it, it still would be 100% better than buying a box of processed whatever.
Okay, and then let's go to the positive side. When people switch over, what are some of the benefits? I mean, you've mentioned some of them already, but
those are the biggest. The energy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what. When I went for still go for my once a year exam, whether I need it or not. And my general practitioner last year said, "Wow, you're like the healthiest person in my practice." And I said, "Well, gee, how many people do you have in your practice?"
Yeah.
He said about 3,500 people.
Wow.
This year, when I went for that exam, and I mentioned that the book had came out, he goes, "Oh, that's great, you did it." And he said, Lisa, if everybody ate like you did, got their rest, got their exercise, they wouldn't need me. Pretty much sums it up.
Right.
So you'd use your doctor when you fell down and broke your knee or something silly, but you wouldn't need him. And I've said, whether you're for the health care debate that's going on or you're against it, we could really take it right off the table.
Yeah.
If people made healthier choices and took control of their own life.
So let's talk about that, because I think most people believe a calorie is a calorie. They just don't understand the differences in the calorie. So maybe give a suggestion of getting started. You mentioned getting rid of some of the white flour. Are there simple, maybe a health tip you could give, maybe a substitution?
Sure. Well, let's go back to the calories, because I've had people say, "Do you count calories?" No. And I don't worry about my weight. What's an easy way to get going raw? An easy way is start with breakfast. I have every morning, a smoothie for breakfast. And people eat smoothie, whether it's a standard American diet. Everybody loves them. The kids love them. They're easy to make. And there's one meal you could do every day and be raw.
Okay.
So that's a third of your day done.
Okay. How about baking? White flour, is there a substitution?
Well,
I've heard
let's do this. One of the recipes in the book, and I do at book signings for tastings, is the chocolate mousse pie. So that crust is made out of dates and shredded coconut. And everybody who tastes that crust is just blown away. And then you can take that, turn that into cookies, bars, balls, etc.
Right.
And it's got 2 ingredients. And it's a no-brainer. It takes about 2 seconds to make it.
Okay, and that's in the book, obviously.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, here's another one. If you are going to cook, one of the things I call out in the book is when you make your almond milk, you save the pulp, and then you turn it to crackers, croutons, and scones. But then you can, grind that up and turn that into flour. So you could use your almond flour from your almond milk if you are going to actually bake.
Interesting. Wow. Well, this is great information. I think people are really going to enjoy this. So you mentioned the pilot, and you sent it to Food Network, and is there a website people can maybe watch some of these videos in the meantime before they see it on TV? They can go to a website?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's www.livingdynamically.com.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to post that right on here below the screen, and thank you very much for sitting with us.
Thank you for having me.